The morning sun filtered through the pristine windows of New York Presbyterian Hospital's exclusive wing, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. James Montgomery Harper III stood motionless at his son's bedside, his tailored Armani suit unable to hide the weight he'd lost over the past 3 months. His 5-year-old boy, Lucas, lay still among a tangle of tubes and wires, his small chest rising and falling with mechanical precision, courtesy of the machines that had become his lifeline. "Mr. Harper," Dr. Reynolds spoke softly from the doorway, clutching a tablet with trembling hands. "May I have a word?" James didn't turn. He'd heard that cautious tone from 99 other specialists before Reynolds. The 100th doctor wouldn't be any different. "So unless you're here to tell me you found something new, there's nothing to discuss," James replied, his voice hoarse from sleepless nights and endless conference calls. At 42, the tech mogul and founder of Harper Innovations had conquered Silicon Valley, amassed a fortune of $11 billion, and revolutionized artificial intelligence. Yet here he stood, powerless to save the one person who mattered most. "I'm afraid the latest test results are consistent with our previous findings," Dr. Reynolds said. "The autoimmune response continues to attack his nervous system, and we've exhausted our conventional treatment options." James finally turned, his steel blue eyes sharp despite his exhaustion. "Then find unconventional options. Money is no object. Fly in specialists from Switzerland, Japan, anywhere. I want every possible treatment explored. Mr. Harper, we've consulted with the world's leading immunologists. The experimental treatments we've tried have failed," James cut in, "so we try something else." Outside the room, hospital staff scurried about, acutely aware of the billionaire's presence. The entire floor had been converted for Lucas's care, with a steady stream of specialists flying in from around the globe, only to leave defeated days later. Dr. Reynolds hesitated before speaking again. "There is one more specialist arriving tomorrow, Dr. Nakamura from Tokyo. His work in pediatric autoimmune disorders is revolutionary, but I must caution you, his methods are experimental at best." James turned back to his son, gently brushing a strand of sandy blonde hair from the boy's forehead. "Book him, and get me his research papers tonight." As the doctor left, James sank into the chair beside the bed. 3 months ago, Lucas had been a vibrant, laughing child, obsessed with dinosaurs and building elaborate Lego structures. Now he lay comatose, his body mysteriously turning against itself after what should have been a routine case of strep throat. "I promise I'll fix this, buddy," James whispered, clutching his son's small hand, "whatever it takes." Meanwhile, 21-year-old Audrey Campbell clutched her hospital ID badge, heart pounding as she rode the service elevator to the elite patient wing. Her first day as a janitor at New York Presbyterian wasn't going as planned. She'd been redirected from her assigned floor due to staff shortages in the VIP section. "Just stay invisible," her supervisor had warned. "The Harper boy is up there. His father owns half of Manhattan and has the hospital board in his pocket. One complaint from him and you're out." Audrey nodded, swallowing hard. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not with her grandmother's medication costs rising and the eviction notice taped to their apartment door. The community college tuition she'd been saving for would have to wait another year. As the elevator doors opened, Audrey wheeled her cleaning cart forward, trying to blend into the background as doctors and nurses rushed past. Her dark, curly hair was pulled back tightly, her uniform slightly too large for her slender frame. "The new protocol starts tonight," she overheard a doctor telling a nurse. "Mr. Harper's approved anything that might help, regardless of cost." "Poor Lucas," the nurse whispered back. 100 doctors and no one can figure out what's wrong. Did you see the father? He hasn't left that room in days." Audrey kept her head down, moving methodically through her assigned rooms. Growing up with her grandmother, a retired hospice nurse, she'd heard countless stories about the mysterious ways illness manifested. "Sometimes the body knows things the doctors don't," her grandmother would say. "And sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected places." In the staff break room, Audrey paused to eat her simple lunch, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple she'd brought from home. 2 nurses entered, continuing a hushed conversation. "I've never seen anything like it," the older nurse said, pouring coffee. "The Harper boy's case has stumped every specialist in the country." "What exactly happened to him?" asked the younger one. "Started with a simple strep infection, then his immune system went haywire. attacked his nervous system, his organs. The fathers spent millions already, private researchers, experimental treatments, even some kind of energy healer from Arizona. Did any of it help? The older nurse shook her head. Not a bit. Poor little thing just keeps declining. They're saying his organs will start shutting down soon. Audrey's chest tightened. She thought of her younger brother, who had passed away from pneumonia when she was 12. They hadn't been able to afford the specialized care he needed, and the local clinic had missed the severity of his condition until it was too late. She'd promised herself she would become a doctor someday, though that dream seemed increasingly distant with each passing month. When Audrey reached the last room on her rounds, she noticed the door slightly ajar. Peering inside, she saw it was empty except for a small figure in the bed. Checking her assignment sheet, she confirmed this was indeed on her list, the private room adjacent to Lucas Harper's suite. She entered quietly, careful not to disturb what she thought was a sleeping child. As she began wiping down surfaces, something in her peripheral vision made her pause. The boy's monitors were flashing warning signals, but no alarm sounded. They must have been silenced. Instinctively, she moved closer. Lucas Harper was pale as the sheets he lay upon, his small body seemingly swallowed by the hospital bed. Dark circles shadowed his closed eyes, and his lips had a bluish tint that alarmed Audrey. She'd seen that color before, in her grandmother's old medical textbooks. Without thinking, Audrey reached out and placed her hand over the boy's. A strange sensation washed over her, a tingling warmth that started in her fingertips and radiated up her arm. She gasped, wanting to pull away, but something held her in place. The warmth intensified, spreading throughout her body, centering in her chest before flowing back through her arm to her hand. Lucas's skin seemed to glow faintly beneath her touch, though Audrey convinced herself it must be a trick of the light. She felt suddenly dizzy, the room spinning around her as the connection between them strengthened. In that moment, James Harper returned to his son's room through the connecting door, stopping dead in his tracks at the sight of the uniformed woman touching his son. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice like ice. Audrey jumped back, knocking over a tray of medical supplies. "I'm sorry, sir, I was just cleaning and I noticed—" "Get away from my son," James growled, reaching for the call button. "Security, please. I didn't mean any harm," Audrey pleaded, backing toward the door. "I just—" A small voice interrupted them. "Daddy?" Both adults froze, turning toward the bed where Lucas Harper was blinking slowly, his eyes focusing for the first time in weeks. "Lucas," James whispered, disbelieving. "I'm thirsty," the boy said weakly. James rushed to his son's side, tears streaming down his face as he pressed the nurse call button repeatedly. "He's awake. My son is awake." Doctors and nurses flooded the room, pushing Audrey further into the background. In the chaos that followed, she slipped out unnoticed, her hands still tingling strangely. As the door closed behind her, she heard the medical staff's astonished exclamations. "His vitals are stabilizing. Pupillary response is normal. This is impossible." Leaning against the wall outside, Audrey tried to steady her breathing. What had just happened? Had she really felt something pass between them, or was it her imagination? More importantly, would anyone believe her if she tried to explain? She looked down at her hands, still warm and buzzing with an energy she couldn't explain. One thing was certain. Whatever had just occurred in that room would change everything. For Lucas, for his billionaire father, and most unexpectedly, for Audrey herself. By morning, news of Lucas Harper's miraculous awakening had spread throughout the hospital. Audrey arrived for her second day of work to find the atmosphere on the VIP floor had transformed completely. Doctors huddled in small groups, speaking in animated whispers, while nurses rushed back and forth with renewed energy. "It's like watching someone rise from the dead," one orderly told another as Audrey wheeled her cart past. "The kid was practically on his way out, and now he's asking for apple juice and cartoons." Audrey kept her head down, her heart racing. She had spent the entire night replaying those strange moments in Lucas's room, the warmth flowing through her hands, the inexplicable connection she'd felt. She had told no one, not even her grandmother. Who would believe her? More importantly, what would happen if someone did? In Lucas's suite, James Harper sat beside his son's bed, watching in amazement as the boy colored in a dinosaur picture book. The transformation was astonishing. Lucas's cheeks had regained their color. His eyes were bright and alert, and most remarkably, his latest blood work showed his immune system had mysteriously stabilized. "Mr. Harper," Dr. Reynolds said, entering the room with a team of specialists. "We'd like to run another series of tests to understand what's happening." "Is something wrong?" James asked sharply, his protective instincts flaring. "Quite the opposite," Dr. Reynolds replied, unable to hide his bewilderment. "Lucas's condition has improved so dramatically that frankly, we can't explain it. His inflammatory markers have dropped by 80% overnight. The autoimmune attack on his nervous system appears to have simply stopped." "Then why more tests?" James demanded, putting his arm around Lucas. "He's finally getting better." Dr. Nakamura, the specialist from Tokyo who had arrived that morning, stepped forward. "Mr. Harper, in my 30 years of practice, I have never witnessed such a sudden reversal of symptoms. This is not just improvement, it's a fundamental change in your son's condition. We must understand why, not only for Lucas, but potentially for other children suffering from similar disorders." James reluctantly nodded. "Fine, but minimal invasive procedures only, and I stay with him at all times." As the doctors continued their discussion, Lucas tugged on his father's sleeve. "Daddy, where's the lady with the warm hands?" James looked down, confused. "What lady, buddy?" "The one who made the hurt go away," Lucas said simply, returning to his coloring. "She had the sun inside her hands." James froze, suddenly remembering the cleaning woman he'd caught touching his son just before Lucas awoke. At the time, he'd been too overcome with emotion to think clearly. But now, "Dr. Reynolds," James called, pulling the physician aside. "Yesterday, before Lucas woke up, there was a hospital employee in this room, a young woman, cleaning staff, I think. I need to know who she was." Dr. Reynolds frowned. "I'll check the staff assignments from yesterday." "May I ask why?" James glanced at his son, who was happily showing his dinosaur drawing to one of the nurses. "Just a hunch." Meanwhile, Audrey was cleaning a vacant room when her supervisor approached, looking stern. "Campbell, did you enter the Harper boys' room yesterday?" he demanded without preamble. Audrey's stomach dropped. I was assigned to clean the adjacent room, sir. I may have entered briefly, but, well, you've been requested upstairs. Mr. Harper's office wants to speak with you." Am I being fired?" Audrey asked, her voice small. The supervisor shrugged. "Just go to the administrative wing, room 502, now." With trembling hands, Audrey removed her cleaning gloves and smoothed down her uniform. The entire elevator ride to the 5th floor, she rehearsed explanations and apologies in her head. She couldn't lose this job. Her grandmother's medicine alone cost over $300 a month, and their landlord had already given them a final warning. Room 502 turned out to be a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Seated at the large glass table was a sharp-looking woman in her 40s, wearing a tailored suit and an expression that revealed nothing. "Audrey Campbell, I'm Patricia Winters, Mr. Harper's chief of staff," the woman said, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit." Audrey perched on the edge of the seat, clasping her hands tightly in her lap. "Ma'am, if this is about yesterday, I just want to say—" "Yesterday," Patricia interrupted, "Lucas Harper woke from a 3-month coma that had baffled 100 of the world's top medical specialists. This morning, his blood work shows his condition is reversing at an unprecedented rate." She leaned forward, studying Audrey intently. "And according to both Lucas and Mr. Harper, you were the last person to touch him before this miraculous recovery began." Audrey swallowed hard. I just felt bad for him. I didn't mean to overstep." Patricia slid a manila folder across the table. "Your employment records show you've been working here for exactly 1 day. Before that, you were a cashier at a grocery store in Queens. Yet your application mentions 2 years of pre-med courses at community college before you had to drop out." She paused. "Why did you leave your studies, Miss Campbell?" "My grandmother got sick," Audrey said quietly. "She raised me after my parents died, and when she needed full-time care, there wasn't really a choice." Patricia nodded, making a note. "And have you ever experienced anything unusual when touching sick people before? Any incident similar to what happened with Lucas?" The question hung in the air, dangerous and enticing. Audrey thought back to moments she'd tried to forget. Her brother's fever breaking suddenly when she'd held his hand through the night, the neighbor's baby stopping his inconsolable crying the moment Audrey picked him up, her grandmother's arthritis pain mysteriously subsiding whenever Audrey helped massage her joints. "I don't know what you mean," Audrey said carefully. Patricia closed the folder. "Mr. Harper would like to speak with you privately. He's arranged for you to be reassigned temporarily as his son's personal attendant, with a substantial increase in salary." She slid a document across the table. "This is a confidentiality agreement. It ensures that anything you see, hear, or experience regarding the Harper family remains strictly private." Audrey stared at the paper, stunned. "Why would Mr. Harper want me near his son? Yesterday he called security on me." "Yesterday his son was dying," Patricia replied evenly. "Today he's eating pancakes and asking for the lady with the warm hands. Mr. Harper is a man of science and logic, but he's also a father who was about to lose everything. He's exploring possibilities." Back in Lucas's room, James paced anxiously while his son napped peacefully for the first time in months. The specialists had left after drawing more blood and running various scans, all showing the same inexplicable improvement. Doctor. Nakamura had been particularly interested in Lucas's description of the warm hands and had asked to interview the cleaning woman himself. James paused by the window, watching the New York traffic below. After his wife Diana's death in a car accident 2 years ago, Lucas had become his entire world. The thought of losing him too had nearly broken James. He would have tried anything, had tried everything from experimental stem cell treatments to obscure herbal remedies from the Amazon rainforest. Could it really be possible? A young cleaning woman with some kind of healing touch? The rational MIT-educated part of his brain rejected the notion outright, yet Lucas was getting better. Something had happened in that room yesterday, something that 100 doctors with all their advanced technology and knowledge had failed to achieve. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Patricia entered with Audrey following hesitantly behind her. "Mr. Harper, this is Audrey Campbell," Patricia said. James turned, studying the young woman carefully. She was younger than he'd thought yesterday, probably early 20s, with deep brown eyes that couldn't hide her nervousness. She looked ordinary in every way, certainly not like someone with miraculous powers. "Thank you, Patricia," James said. "Please give us a moment." When they were alone, James gestured toward his sleeping son. "The doctors can't explain what's happening. They're calling it a spontaneous remission, but that doesn't account for the timing." He fixed his gaze on Audrey. "My son says you have the sun in your hands. What does that mean?" Audrey shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know, sir. I felt bad seeing him like that. I touched his hand and—" She trailed off, unsure how to describe what had happened without sounding insane. "And what?" James pressed. "It felt warm," she said finally, "like something was passing between us. I've felt it before sometimes with sick people, but never so strongly." Lucas stirred in his sleep, a small smile playing on his lips, an expression James hadn't seen in months. James made a decision. "Whatever is happening, it's helping my son," he said firmly. "I want you to continue working with him. Patricia has arranged for you to be assigned as his personal attendant. The salary is 5 times your current rate, plus a housing allowance if you need it." Audrey's eyes widened. "Mr. Harper, I'm not a nurse or a—" "I don't care what you are," James interrupted. "I care about results. And whatever happened when you touched my son, it worked when nothing else would." His voice softened slightly. "Please. He's all I have left." Audrey thought of her grandmother, of the eviction notice, of her deferred dreams of medical school. Then she looked at Lucas, peaceful in sleep, already so much healthier than yesterday. "I'll need some time to arrange care for my grandmother," she said finally. "Done," James replied instantly. "She can have in-home nursing care, the best available. Patricia will arrange everything." As Audrey left the room to speak with Patricia about the details, she felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. The opportunity was beyond anything she could have imagined. Financial security, a chance to help this little boy, perhaps even a path back to her medical studies someday. But deep down, a whisper of warning echoed through her mind. What if whatever had happened with Lucas was a one-time miracle? What if she couldn't replicate it? What if, in the harsh light of medical scrutiny, her gift turned out to be nothing more than coincidence and wishful thinking? And most troubling of all, what would James Harper do if she failed to save his son a second time? 2 weeks later, Audrey sat by Lucas's bed, reading him The Magic Treehouse as afternoon sunlight streamed through the hospital windows. The boy was propped up against his pillows, color in his cheeks and brightness in his eyes, as he interrupted with questions about dinosaurs and ancient Egypt. "Will we go see real pyramids someday, Audrey?" he asked eagerly. "That's a question for your dad," Audrey replied with a smile, glancing at James, who was working on his laptop in the corner of the room. James looked up, his expression softer than it had been when Audrey first met him. "Absolutely, buddy. As soon as Dr. Reynolds says you're ready to travel." The transformation in Lucas over the past 14 days had stunned the medical community. His autoimmune markers had dropped to near normal levels, his organ function had stabilized, and he was gaining strength daily. Videos of his physical therapy sessions were being shared among specialists worldwide, with many calling it the most remarkable recovery they'd ever witnessed. For Audrey, the days had fallen into a strange new rhythm. Each morning she would arrive at the hospital and spend an hour with Lucas, her hands gently resting on his shoulders or back, that now familiar warmth flowing between them. The doctors called it therapeutic touch in their notes, a clinical term for something none of them truly understood. Dr. Nakamura had been particularly fascinated, conducting a series of tests measuring energy fields and cellular responses during these sessions. Though he spoke little about his findings, Audrey had seen the wonder in his eyes when reviewing his data. "Ms. Campbell," Dr. Reynolds said, entering the room with his usual clipboard, "may I borrow you for a moment? Dr. Nakamura would like to discuss something." James glanced up sharply. "Is everything all right?" "Just some routine questions," Dr. Reynolds assured him, though the tension in his shoulders suggested otherwise. In a small conference room down the hall, Dr. Nakamura sat surrounded by charts and medical imaging screens. His typically composed demeanor seemed disturbed. "Ah, Miss Campbell," he said, gesturing to a chair, "thank you for coming. I have been studying the energy transfer during your sessions with Lucas." "Energy transfer?" Audrey repeated. Dr. Nakamura nodded, pulling up a series of thermal images. "These show temperature changes in both your body and Lucas's during your touch therapy. When you place your hands on him, your core temperature drops by approximately 2 degrees, while his rises by the same amount. It's as if—" He hesitated. "As if you are transferring your own life energy to him." Audrey stared at the images, a chill running through her. "Is that dangerous?" Dr. Reynolds cleared his throat. "That's what concerns us, Ms. Campbell. Your latest blood work shows some concerning changes. Anemia, decreased white cell count, elevated inflammatory markers. In simple terms, you appear to be taking on aspects of Lucas's condition." "But that's impossible," Audrey whispered, though even as she spoke she knew it wasn't. The increasing fatigue she'd felt, the headaches, the bruises appearing on her arms, she'd attributed it all to stress and long hours. "Miss Campbell," Dr. Nakamura said gently, "I believe you possess a remarkable ability, but it comes at a significant cost to your own health. If these sessions continue at the current frequency and intensity, the drain on your system could become severe." Dr. Reynolds placed a hand on Audrey's shoulder. "We're recommending that we scale back the sessions to once every 3 days, and for shorter durations." "But Lucas is getting better," Audrey protested. "He needs this." "You need to be healthy too," Dr. Reynolds countered, "and Mr. Harper needs to be informed about these findings." Audrey's stomach tightened. "No, please. He'll insist on continuing the sessions. You've seen how desperate he is to have Lucas fully recovered." The doctors exchanged uncomfortable glances. "As medical professionals, we're obligated to disclose significant health risks to all parties involved," Dr. Reynolds said firmly. "I'm scheduling a meeting with Mr. Harper this afternoon." Back in Lucas's room, Audrey tried to focus on the story she was reading, but her mind kept returning to the doctor's warnings. Was she really absorbing Lucas's illness? The thought was both terrifying and somehow right. It explained the deep connection she felt with the boy, the sense that something tangible passed between them during their sessions. "Audrey, you look tired," Lucas said, interrupting her thoughts. "Do you need a nap?" "Daddy says everyone needs naps sometimes, even grown-ups." Audrey smiled, touched by his concern. "Maybe I do. You're very observant, Lucas." "That's because I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up," he declared confidently. "Like Dr. Reynolds, but nicer." James looked up from his work, his expression softening. "Is that so? What happened to being an astronaut?" "I can be both," Lucas said with a child's perfect logic. "And Audrey can work with me. She makes people better." The simple statement hung in the air, heavy with meaning. James studied Audrey's face, noting for the first time the dark circles under her eyes, the pallor of her skin. Before he could comment, his phone rang. After a brief conversation, he stood. "That was Patricia. The board members are waiting for our video call." He hesitated. "Will you be okay with Lucas for another hour?" "Of course," Audrey assured him, pushing aside her fatigue. After James left, Lucas fell asleep over his book. Audrey tucked the blankets around him and moved to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. In just 2 weeks, her life had transformed completely. Her grandmother was now living in a luxury assisted living facility with round-the-clock care. Their old apartment in Queens felt like a distant memory compared to the furnished corporate housing James had arranged near the hospital. Yet, despite these improvements, a nagging unease had taken root. The more Lucas improved, the worse she felt. Not just physically, but emotionally, as if she were absorbing not only his illness, but something deeper, something tied to the Harper family itself. James returned earlier than expected, his expression grave. "Audrey, Dr. Reynolds just called. He says we need to talk about some test results." "Oh," she said, trying to sound casual. "He mentioned something about physiological transference and potential risks to your health." James's eyes narrowed. "What's going on?" Before Audrey could answer, a sharp knock came at the door. Patricia entered, followed by a tall, elegant woman with ash-blonde hair. "James, I'm sorry to interrupt," Patricia began, "but what is she doing here?" the blonde woman demanded, staring directly at Audrey. James's face paled. "Diana?" Audrey froze, confusion washing over her. Diana, but Lucas's mother, James's wife, was dead. She'd seen the family photos, heard Lucas talk about his mommy in heaven. "James, we need to speak privately," the woman said, her voice cold and controlled. "Now." Patricia quickly stepped forward. "Audrey, why don't you take a break? I'll stay with Lucas." In a daze, Audrey allowed herself to be ushered from the room. As the door closed behind her, she caught one last glimpse of the woman, Diana, moving toward Lucas's bed with tears in her eyes. Audrey found herself in the hospital chapel, the only quiet space she could think of to gather her thoughts. Diana Harper was alive? How was that possible? And why had James and everyone else led her to believe otherwise? Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Meeting in Mr. Harper's office, 1 hour." The hour passed in a blur of confusion and mounting anxiety. When Audrey finally entered James's temporary office at the hospital, she found him alone, standing by the window. "Sit down, Audrey," he said without turning around. She did, her heart pounding. "I don't understand what's happening." James was silent for a long moment. "Diana and I separated 2 years ago," he finally said. "It was ugly. She moved to Europe, wanted nothing to do with us. When Lucas got sick, I tried to contact her, but she disappeared, changed her name, her contact information, everything." He turned to face Audrey, his expression haunted. "When the doctors told me Lucas was dying, I hired private investigators to find her. She's his mother. She deserved to know. But by then..." "Well, you had already worked your miracle." "But why did you tell me she was dead?" Audrey asked, hurt and confusion evident in her voice. James's jaw tightened. "I never said that. Lucas believes his mother is dead because that's what Diana wanted him to think. She told him she was going to heaven the day she left. She couldn't handle being a mother anymore. Couldn't handle our life." The bitterness in his voice was palpable. "Now she's back, claiming maternal rights, demanding to be part of Lucas's recovery. After abandoning him when he was healthy, she wants to swoop in for the miraculous healing story." Audrey struggled to process this information. "What does this mean for Lucas's treatment, for our sessions?" "Diana wants them stopped immediately," James said flatly. "She's consulted with her own medical team, who claim what you're doing is dangerous pseudoscience that could be harming Lucas. But the improvements could be coincidental, according to her experts." James raked a hand through his hair in frustration. "She's threatening legal action to block any further experimental treatments not approved by traditional medical standards." A wave of dizziness washed over Audrey, forcing her to grip the arms of her chair. The room tilted sideways for a moment before steadying. James was at her side instantly. "Audrey, what's wrong?" "I'm fine," she insisted, though the weakness in her voice betrayed her. "Just tired." "Dr. Reynolds showed me your test results," James said, his voice softening. "Why didn't you tell me what was happening? That these sessions were making you sick?" "Because Lucas needs them," Audrey said simply. James studied her face. "You care about him that much? A child you barely knew 2 weeks ago?" "He reminds me of my brother," Audrey admitted quietly. "I couldn't save Tommy, but Lucas I can help." Understanding dawned in James's eyes. "That's why you dropped out of medical school. Not just for your grandmother, but because of your brother." Audrey nodded, tears threatening. "I was supposed to be watching him that day. If I'd recognized the symptoms sooner." James took her hand, surprising them both. "You were a child yourself, Audrey. So is Lucas," she replied. "And I won't abandon him now, no matter what his mother says." Before James could respond, the office door burst open. Diana Harper stood in the doorway, her perfect composure cracking. "Lucas's fever is back," she said, her voice breaking. "The doctors say it's happening again. All of it. Whatever temporary improvement he had is reversing." James was on his feet instantly. "That's impossible. He was fine an hour ago." "Well, he's not fine now," Diana snapped. "And your miracle worker here hasn't been near him, so explain that." The three rushed to Lucas's room, where medical staff were already gathered around his bed. The boy was flushed with fever, his breathing labored, monitors beeping in alarm. Dr. Reynolds looked up as they entered. "His inflammatory markers are spiking again. It's as if the autoimmune response has reactivated." "Do something," Diana demanded. Dr. Nakamura stepped forward. "Perhaps Ms. Campbell?" All eyes turned to Audrey. Diana's expression hardened. "Absolutely not. I forbid any more of this witch doctor nonsense." "Diana," James said warningly. "No, James. I've consulted with real medical experts. Whatever this woman is doing, it's not based in science. It could be causing Lucas permanent damage." "The only thing damaging Lucas right now is this delay," Dr. Nakamura said firmly. "His condition is deteriorating rapidly." Diana moved to block Audrey's path to the bed. "I am his mother, and I say no." "And I'm his father," James countered. "The father who was here for him when you disappeared to find yourself in the Swiss Alps." As the parents argued, Audrey felt something pulling her toward Lucas. The same inexplicable connection she'd felt that first day. Without waiting for permission, she moved past Diana and placed her hands on Lucas's burning forehead. The familiar warmth flowed immediately, stronger than ever before, a current of energy passing from her body to his. Lucas's eyes fluttered open, focusing on her face. "I knew you'd come back," he whispered. Diana grabbed Audrey's arm, trying to pull her away. "Get your hands off my son." But in that moment, something extraordinary happened. As Diana's hand touched Audrey's skin, the energy flow changed direction, no longer moving from Audrey to Lucas, but from Diana to Audrey to Lucas, creating a circuit that linked all three of them. Diana gasped, her eyes widening as she felt it too. The unmistakable pull of life force, the connection that transcended medical explanation. What is this?" she whispered, unable to pull away. Dr. Nakamura watched in fascination, his scientific mind struggling to comprehend what his eyes were seeing. The energy transfer. It's amplified with the biological mother in the circuit. The shared DNA is creating a harmonic resonance. Slowly, the monitors around Lucas's bed began to stabilize. His breathing eased, the flush of fever fading from his cheeks. But as he improved, both Audrey and, surprisingly, Diana showed signs of distress. Pale, sweating, their own strength visibly diminishing. After what seemed like an eternity, Audrey broke the connection, staggering backward into James's arms. Diana collapsed into a nearby chair, looking shaken to her core. "What just happened?" she demanded, her voice barely audible. Dr. Nakamura stepped forward, his expression grave but filled with wonder. "I believe we have just witnessed the true nature of Ms. Campbell's gift. She doesn't merely heal, she redistributes life force. And with a biological connection like mother and child, that redistribution becomes optimal." Diana looked at Audrey with new understanding. "You've been taking his illness into yourself," she said slowly. "Killing yourself to save my son." Audrey nodded weakly. "It was my choice, but it shouldn't be," James said firmly, still supporting Audrey's trembling form. "Not anymore." He turned to Diana. Years of bitterness momentarily set aside in the face of this new revelation. You felt it too. You know this is real now. Diana nodded, tears streaming down her face as she looked at her son, now sleeping peacefully. Yes, she whispered, I know. 3 days later, the Harper family's private medical suite had been transformed. The cold clinical atmosphere was softened by colorful drawings taped to the walls, stuffed animals piled on Lucas's bed, and a constant stream of children's movies playing on the large television. But the most significant change was the presence of 3 hospital beds instead of 1. Lucas in the center, flanked by Audrey and Diana. Doctor. Nakamura had converted the room into what he called an energy transfer chamber, with sophisticated monitoring equipment, tracking vital signs, body temperature, and mysterious readings he labeled simply as biofield measurements. The Japanese specialist had brought in additional equipment from his Tokyo research facility, devices that seemed more at home in a science fiction movie than a hospital. James sat in a chair between the beds, his laptop abandoned as he watched the 3 patients. Following Dr. Nakamura's discovery about the shared biological connection, Diana had immediately volunteered to participate in the treatment protocol. It was the first selfless act James had seen from his estranged wife in years, and it had momentarily silenced his bitterness. How are you feeling? He asked softly, looking first at Audrey, then at Diana. Like I ran a marathon, Diana admitted, her designer clothes replaced by a simple hospital gown. Without her perfect makeup and styled hair, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more like the woman James had fallen in love with 15 years ago. Worth it, Audrey murmured, though her pallor was alarming. The shared healing sessions had taken a visible toll on both women, but the results for Lucas had been unprecedented. Dr. Reynolds entered with the latest test results, his expression cautiously optimistic. Lucas's blood work is remarkable. The autoimmune markers are almost completely normalized. If this continues, we could be looking at a full recovery within weeks, not months. And the side effects? James asked, glancing worriedly at Audrey and Diana. Dr. Reynolds's expression sobered. That's the concerning part. Both Ms. Campbell and Mrs. Harper are showing signs of immune system compromise. Nothing severe yet, but the cumulative effect of these sessions could become problematic. Dr. Nakamura joined them, studying the readouts from his specialized equipment. The energy transfer is not sustainable indefinitely, he agreed. While effective, it creates a temporary imbalance that the human body can only tolerate for limited periods. Then we need to find another way, James insisted. There must be some way to amplify the healing without draining Audrey and Diana. Dr. Nakamura hesitated. There is one possibility, but it would require something from you, Mr. Harper. Anything, James said without hesitation. Blood transfusion, the specialist explained, direct from father to son, modified through a process I've been developing in my research. Ms. Campbell would serve as the conduit, for lack of a better term. Diana pushed herself up on her elbow. Is that safe? Theoretically, Dr. Nakamura admitted. It has never been attempted in precisely this way before. But my research suggests that with the biological connection strengthened by direct blood transfer, the healing effect could be amplified while reducing the drain on any single individual. James rolled up his sleeve without hesitation. Let's do it. Wait, Audrey interjected weakly. You don't understand what it feels like, the transfer. It's intense, painful even, and we don't know what adding another person to the circuit might do. I'm not asking anyone to do anything I'm not willing to do myself, James said firmly. Lucas is my son. I should have been part of this from the beginning. The procedure was scheduled for the following morning. Throughout the night, medical staff prepared the specialized equipment under Dr. Nakamura's guidance, while James, Diana, and Audrey rested as much as possible. Lucas, blissfully unaware of the adults' concerns, was simply happy to have both his parents in the same room for the first time in his memory. Are you and Mommy friends again? He asked James as the man tucked him in for the night. James glanced across the room where Diana was speaking quietly with one of the nurses. We're working together for you, buddy, because we both love you very much. Lucas's small face grew serious. Is Audrey going to be okay? She looks really tired. We're all going to be okay, James promised, hoping it wasn't a lie. Now get some sleep, tomorrow is a big day. Later that night, when Lucas was asleep and Diana had stepped out to take a call from her lawyer, James found himself alone with Audrey for the first time in days. "You should be resting," he told her, noting the dark circles under her eyes. "I keep thinking about that first day," Audrey said softly. "How random it was that I was assigned to this floor. If I'd been sent anywhere else in the hospital—" "I don't believe it was random," James replied. "I stopped believing in coincidence the moment Lucas opened his eyes." Audrey smiled faintly. "My grandmother would say it was meant to be. She always believed in things beyond scientific explanation." "Smart woman," James said. "I'd like to meet her someday." "She'd like you," Audrey told him, "though she'd probably give you a lecture about working too much." James laughed softly. "She'd be right." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the steady beeping of monitors and Lucas's peaceful breathing. "Why did you agree to all this?" James finally asked. "You could have walked away, found another job. Instead, you've risked everything for a child you barely knew." Audrey's gaze drifted to Lucas. "When I was 12, my brother got sick. Just a fever at first. My parents were gone. They worked night shifts, and I was supposed to be watching him. By the time I realized how serious it was," she took a shaky breath, "the doctor said it was pneumonia, that it came on suddenly, that there was nothing I could have done." "But you never believed them," James said gently. "I knew there was something wrong hours before I called 911, Audrey admitted. I thought it was a normal cold. I didn't want to overreact." Her eyes filled with tears. "When I held his hand in the hospital that night, I felt something. That same warmth I felt with Lucas, but I didn't understand it then. I didn't know how to use it." James moved to sit beside her bed, taking her hand. "You were a child yourself. That doesn't bring Tommy back," Audrey whispered. "But maybe I was given this gift for a reason. Maybe saving Lucas is part of that reason." "At the cost of your own health?" James questioned. Audrey met his gaze steadily. "Some things are worth the cost, Mr. Harper." "James," he corrected softly, "after all this, I think you've earned the right to use my first name." Morning arrived with a tense energy pervading the suite. Dr. Nakamura's team had transformed the room overnight, installing complex equipment and setting up a circular arrangement of beds, where Lucas lay in the center, with Audrey, Diana, and now James positioned around him like points on a compass. Dr. Reynolds looked nervous. "Dr. Nakamura, I must formally state that as Chief of Medicine, I have serious reservations about this procedure." "Noted," Dr. Nakamura replied calmly, "but I believe the potential benefits outweigh the risks." James caught Audrey's eye across the room. She gave him a small nod of encouragement. On the other side, Diana looked pale but determined, her hand already reaching toward Lucas. "We'll begin with a direct blood transfusion from father to son," Dr. Nakamura explained. "Ms. Campbell will maintain physical contact with Lucas while Mrs. Harper completes the circuit. The theory is that the biological connection will amplify the healing effect while distributing the energy drain across all three adults." As the transfusion began, Audrey placed her hands on Lucas's shoulders. Almost immediately, the now familiar warmth began to flow. But something was different this time. The drain on her energy was less intense, more diffuse. Diana gasped as she felt the connection form, the strange pull of energy flowing through her to her son. Across the bed, James experienced it for the first time, a sensation like electricity, but warmer, more organic, flowing from some deep reservoir within him outward through his hands. Dr. Nakamura watched his instruments with fascination. Remarkable. The energy transfer is nearly twice as efficient with all three biological connections active. And look, the drain is being distributed evenly among the adults, not concentrated on Ms. Campbell as before. Lucas's eyes fluttered open, bright and alert. "It feels like sunshine," he said wonderingly. "From all of you." For nearly an hour, the connection held. The machines recording data that would later revolutionize Dr. Nakamura's understanding of biofield healing. When they finally broke contact, all three adults were tired, but not depleted, as Audrey had been after previous sessions. "His readings are stabilizing," Dr. Reynolds announced, checking Lucas's vitals. "Temperature normal, blood pressure perfect." Dr. Nakamura studied his specialized readouts. "The autoimmune markers have decreased another 30%, just in this single session. At this rate, we could see complete remission within days, not weeks, Dr. Reynolds finished, unable to hide his astonishment. 3 days later, Lucas Harper sat on his hospital bed, fully dressed in jeans and a dinosaur t-shirt, impatiently waiting for the final discharge paperwork. The suite that had been his home for nearly 4 months was now stripped of medical equipment, packed boxes stacked neatly by the door. "When can we go to the dinosaur museum?" he asked, swinging his legs energetically. "As soon as we get home and settled," James promised, signing the last of the release forms. "Doctor Reynolds said you're officially the healthiest 5-year-old he's ever examined." Lucas beamed. "That's because I have the best healing team ever." James couldn't argue with that assessment. The daily sessions with Audrey, Diana, and himself had produced results that defied medical explanation. Dr. Nakamura had already submitted a paper to several prestigious medical journals, though he'd carefully anonymized the participants' identities to protect their privacy. Diana entered the room, looking more relaxed than James had seen her in years. The past week had transformed their relationship in unexpected ways. The shared experience of channeling healing energy to their son had broken down barriers that years of therapy might never have touched. "The car is ready," she announced, "and I've confirmed the reservation for dinner tonight." Though they weren't reconciling romantically, they had reached a new understanding about co-parenting Lucas. Diana had even purchased a home near James's in Connecticut, abandoning her European lifestyle to be close to her son. "Where's Audrey?" Lucas asked, looking around. "She promised to say goodbye." James and Diana exchanged glances. "She'll meet us downstairs, buddy," James said carefully. The truth was more complicated. After the success of Lucas's treatment, Audrey had made a difficult decision. With Lucas healed and her financial future secured by James's generosity, she had applied to return to medical school. James had insisted on covering her tuition and expenses, a gift he considered insignificant compared to what she had given his family. But there was more to Audrey's decision than just returning to her studies. Dr. Nakamura had offered her a position in his research institute in Tokyo, studying the physiological aspects of energy healing. It was an unprecedented opportunity to understand her gift scientifically, while helping others with similar conditions to Lucas's. In the hospital lobby, Audrey waited nervously, a small gift bag in her hands. When the elevator doors opened and Lucas ran out, she knelt to receive his enthusiastic hug. "I made this for you," she said, handing him the bag. Lucas pulled out a hand-knitted dinosaur. "It's awesome," he exclaimed. "Will you come visit me at my house? Dad says we have a swimming pool and you can come swim anytime." Audrey glanced up at James, who had joined them with Diana. "I'd like that very much, but I'm going to be studying in Japan for a while. It's very far away." Lucas's face fell. "But you'll come back, right?" "Of course you will," James said, meeting Audrey's eyes. "Some connections can't be broken by distance." Outside the hospital, as Lucas excitedly climbed into the luxury SUV with Diana, James lingered with Audrey on the sidewalk. "You've changed our lives," he said simply. "Not just by healing Lucas, but by showing us what really matters." Audrey smiled. "You gave me back my dream, and Lucas taught me that my gift doesn't have to be a burden. It can be a calling." "Dr. Nakamura says you could revolutionize medicine," James said. "Though I suspect you already knew that. I just want to understand it better," Audrey replied, "so I can help more children like Lucas and maybe—" She hesitated. "Maybe finish what I couldn't do for Tommy." James nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Your flight to Tokyo leaves next week?" "Wednesday morning," she confirmed. "We'll see you before then," James promised. "Lucas would never forgive me if we didn't have a proper goodbye dinner, and I—" He paused, suddenly unsure of himself. "I'd like to know that this isn't really goodbye." "It isn't," Audrey assured him, her eyes meeting his with quiet certainty. "Some things are meant to be." As she watched the Harper family drive away, Audrey felt a peculiar sense of completion. What had begun as a desperate job to avoid eviction had transformed into an extraordinary journey of healing. Not just for Lucas, but for Diana, for James, and perhaps most surprisingly, for herself. The gift she had once hidden, the ability she had feared and misunderstood, now offered a path forward. In Tokyo, working with Dr. Nakamura, she would learn to control and direct her healing energy without depleting herself. And when she returned, as she knew she would, The Harper family would be waiting. James had already established a foundation for researching conditions like Lucas's, with Audrey named as the future medical director once she completed her studies. It was a future brighter than anything she could have imagined that first day, pushing her cleaning cart through the hospital corridors. As Audrey hailed a taxi to take her to her grandmother's new retirement community, she thought about the strange chain of events that had brought her to this moment. One random assignment change, one impulsive touch of a dying child's hand, and everything had changed for Lucas, for his family, and for a young woman who had only wanted to make enough money to keep a roof over her head. Some connections, she whispered to herself, echoing James's words, can't be broken by distance